Call this meeting to order. Representative Rigby, if you could lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get started, if we could have the members introduce themselves that are here, starting with Representative Rigby.
Representative Jim Rigby, Cambria, Somerset Counties, 71st District.
Representative Abby Major, 60th District, Armstrong and Westmoreland Counties.
Representative George Dunbar, 56th District, Westmoreland County.
Barbara Gleim, 199th District, portions of Cumberland County.
Representative Dawn Kiefer, 92nd District, Northern York County.
'99th District, Northeast Lancaster County, Dave Zimmerman.
And online, so today online we are working on some technical issues. They can hear us, but we cannot hear them. We are working on getting that fixed, so hopefully by the time this hearing develops, we will be, you'll be able to ask questions. Just raise your hand. Online, I see Representative Shalaba, Representative Twardzik, Representative Flick, Representative Diamond, Representative Adams, Representative Brown, Representative Smith, it said Brian Smith, and Representative Miller. Anyone else? If someone else comes on, we will do our best to announce they're here. But if you do have a question, we'll hopefully have the technical issue fixed here in the next couple of minutes. Feel free to raise your hand online. Let's get right into this hearing. We had a great group of testifiers today on an issue that is very important to many of us, myself included. It's very important to the constituents of my district and across this Commonwealth. One of the things that we have heard as we've talked to stakeholders as an obstacle to opportunity is the permitting process, and not just what is being permitted, but how long, especially how long it takes to get anything permitted. I think we make the unfortunate mistake sometimes as representatives talking about these issues in very just, mundane, dry ways. But really what we're talking about here is hope for our constituents' future. It's opportunity, it's prosperity, it's excellence in government. It's operating in a way where we can actually have transformation and opportunity. And there's been a lot of good talk on this. The administration has noted that he also wants to get permitting under control. But in order to actually do that, I firmly believe that we need to have the ability and the fortitude to challenge the status quo. We cannot simply say that we want opportunity and transformation and do nothing about details like the permitting process. We have to be willing to challenge what's there and challenge the status quo and disrupt the status quo. Pennsylvania is not in a place where the status quo is going to lead us to prosperity. I'm looking forward to these testifiers today. We have Mr. David Taylor, my friend from the Manufacturers Association, Mr. Kevin Sunday from the Chamber, from the Pennsylvania Chamber, and Mr. Michael Ford from the Pennsylvania Building Trades. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. I believe our first testifier is Mr. Taylor. The floor is yours, and if all three, or is it whoever's supposed to be
I was
first?
supposed to go last.
Okay, Mr. Sunday. I had my order backwards. So, okay. Mr. Sunday, if you could start us off, and then we'll ask questions after all three of you have testified. Thank you very much.
Very good. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Kale, honorable members of the committee and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning. My name is Kevin Sunday, Director of Government Affairs with the Pennsylvania Chamber. We're the largest broad-based business advocacy organization in the state. We represent nearly 10,000 businesses of all sectors and sizes. As the chairman mentioned, we want to make the state more competitive, and fixing the permitting process is key to do that. We at the Chamber, we're incredibly proud of our state's leadership on agriculture, manufacturing, energy, life sciences, innovation, and technology. Most recently, we launched a Coolest Thing Made in PA bracket, which is drawing tens of thousands of votes online. And it's a spotlight for all the great things we produce in the state, from the Super Bowl stage made at Rock Lidditz to Astrobotics Lunar Lander, the Sheets MTO to Mrs. T's Pierogies. And it's quite clear from the response we've gotten from folks across the state, many of your constituents, Pennsylvanians are very proud of the things that they make. But it's just that we're making many incredible things already. We know we're just scratching the surface. We excel at the early stages of research and development across a number of high-value, high-tech industries, but too often we lose out on the full supply chain and value creation in manufacturing and job gains due to our uncompetitive statewide policies. We want that to change. We know many of you do. We know folks across the aisle in the Senate do. We know the governor said in his budget address early this month, quote, "The permitting process takes too damn long." And he has established an office to streamline critical projects through state government approvals. He's mentioned a desire to fix the process as a criteria for his cabinet selections at state agencies. But good management is one thing, fixing the process is another. So we think we need to build upon the governor's rhetoric with proposals that have come out of the House and Senate in recent sessions but have not gotten to the governor's desk that reform and streamline the permitting process. We stand in agreement with the building trades that getting projects through the red tape faster means more opportunity for business, labor, working families, and future generations. That type of legislative activity paired with the governor's rhetoric is encouraging. It's an opportunity, so let's build upon it. Now, we appreciate the governor promising a money-back guarantee if an agency doesn't hit the guidelines. That said, what business really wants is the permit. A financial institution will not close on the loan until the permit's issued and litigation's concluded. So while we note the governor's remarks, I want to flag what another governor said. Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas, when they beat us out for the next generation of steel mills, his response was, "We will get them built faster in Arkansas than Pennsylvania could permit them." We lost expansion of a petrochemical asset in the Southeast due to infrastructure. We weren't even in the running for a semiconductor manufacturer because of site availability. Other manufacturers that produce life-sustaining medicine and consumer goods tell us at the chamber that our process to permitting really lowers the internal deliberations of where the next investment's going to go. And if we look at site selection rankings, CNBC Best States for Business, it's telling us the same thing. Our process is not friendly enough to new investment. We have a generational opportunity. Folks are looking to get out of China. They're leaving Europe because of high energy costs. We want to welcome them here to our state, but we need certainty. We need a process that says, come here, we have the infrastructure, we have the process, we have the workforce, build here. So therefore, a few recommendations we've included in the testimony. Again, go beyond money-back guarantee and actually establish a timeline for permitting that, if not met, the permit is deemed approved. We certainly understand agencies need the resources, both technology, personnel, and process to get permits out the door faster. There's a lot of federal funding coming for infrastructure. We think it's wise to make sure the agencies have the resources they need, and also contract with third-party technical consultants, as many other states do, like Washington, like New Jersey. If it's a challenge for the agencies to hire qualified technical people from engineering and skilled trades and skilled sciences, and we've heard that, there's a lot of private sector talent that would be happy to contract with the agency to help them get through the process. And finally, once the permit's issued, we think it just makes sense to look at the federal process for permit appeals, which is simply, if you didn't raise the issue in comment, it's not germane to litigation. If it was important enough to sue the agency over and hold the private sector project up, you should have raised it in comment. Second, and related, if the agency loses a case, we really need to limit when attorney's fees are awarded. The state permitting coffer should not be a honeypot for NGOs to pull from. These are some holistic reforms we recommended. We also need to just generally take an approach that preserves energy choice, competitive markets, welcomes new technology like carbon capture and hydrogen production. There's trucking emissions from California we think we should detach ourselves from. Spill response clarity. Again, these are pieces that have moved in past sessions. We think it's important to take the next step forward and actually getting done. So in closing, we're grateful that business, labor, and both sides of the aisle are talking about fixing the process. It's time to get it done. We want Pennsylvania to be the one seed for new investment and opportunity, but unless and until we become more competitive from a tax and permitting standpoint, modernize the infrastructure, and make sure we have a skilled workforce, our bracket's going to stay busted. Thank you for the opportunity, and happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sunday. I just wanted to make note that Chairwoman Oberlander came in and Representative Ledbetter as well. Mr. Ford?
Good morning, Representative Kale. I appreciate you having me here today, and I'm going to echo some things that Mr. Sunday said. We miss out on a lot of projects in Pennsylvania because it just takes too long to do anything. It takes 4 years to get a bridge or a road going, 6 years to get a bridge. We missed out on U.S. Steel project in the west. We missed out on the pipeline in the east. these are problems that we have, and they're fixable, but we lose a lot of jobs and hours that would go to Pennsylvania workers if we could just fix this system. And we need to streamline it, make it a one-stop shop. I applaud the governor and both sides of the aisle to do the right thing here and try to come up with a fix. We're at a historic time right now where we have bipartisan support. I know Republicans have been after this for years. Democrats are, Josh is leading the way on it. So I think we should get together and work together for Pennsylvania. Let's see. We have everything in Pennsylvania. We have all the logistics we need. We have certainly a skilled, qualified workforce. We have energy like nobody's business in the state. We could really take it to the next level, but we have to work together to get that done. So I think this is the best way to start that process. So thank you for having me here, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
Okay. So you're going to get this in triplicate. There are a number of the same points that my friends have raised here. Before I start, though, I just want to say I am so profoundly grateful to the artisans and the craftsmen and the staff and the leadership of the Capital Preservation Committee. When I first arrived in Harrisburg in 1993, that this building was just beginning the preservation process. And so to be here in this beautiful space, which is open to the public, is conducting the people's business, it really is almost overpowering, and it speaks also to the great vision of the distinguished Pennsylvanian whose name is on the front of this building. That Speaker Matthew J. Ryan was the one who set in motion the capital preservation process. And anyway, it just makes me especially happy to be here today. So I thank you, Chairman Kale, distinguished members of the committee. I'm David N. Taylor, President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, the statewide not-for-profit trade organization representing the people who make things here in the Commonwealth. And I appreciate the chance to speak with you, and I thank my friends here for their very helpful testimony. And again, just to underscore the importance of manufacturing and what it means to Pennsylvania's economy, manufacturing is the engine that drives Pennsylvania forward, adding $92 billion in value every year, directly employing over 500,000 Pennsylvanians on the plant floor, and sustaining millions of additional Pennsylvania jobs through supply chains, distribution networks, and industrial vendors. Because manufacturing is the sector that adds the most value, manufacturing jobs offer the best wages and benefits in the marketplace. The manufacturing process also has the strongest multiplier effect on job creation. Additionally, manufacturing employers are significant local taxpayers, sustaining the local tax base and funding important local services. As we all know, a community that loses its factory is a community that is facing significant decline. This is why Pennsylvania's policymakers should be interested in the health of our manufacturing economy and how state policy decisions affect the competitiveness of our business environment. So the burden of regulatory compliance is a critical area of business competitiveness where Pennsylvania needs to improve. As has been said, Governor Shapiro has spoken about the need for Pennsylvania to move at the speed of business, in addition to the importance of regulatory reform. So we are hopeful that slashing red tape and accelerating permits can become a point of bipartisan consensus. And I would also note, so Abraham Lincoln shared an awful lot of wisdom along the way. And one of his quotes that's my favorite is that he said, "I destroy my enemy when I make him my friend." So, if Governor Shapiro was willing to be our friend with all of this, that is a very, very welcome development. So the governor has also issued an executive order that application fees should be refunded when permits are not approved on time. This customer-focused view of government functions is a welcome change, and we thank him for it, although, as Mr. Sunday said, it does not get quite as far as we need it to go. After all, what the applicant really needs is the permit itself, because no productive activity can occur until after the state permit or license is in hand. Many times, investors are burning daylight and their limited capital, waiting to get an okay from Harrisburg, endangering the planned projects and all of the jobs and economic dynamism that would come from them. So to get state government permitting on track, there are several things that we would recommend be done that you've already heard some of these. First of all, when applications are not reviewed within the legal time limit, those applications should be automatically deemed approved and issued to the applicant. And although I am told that there are specific liability complications that Pennsylvania will have to address first, many other states have contracts with third-party vendors to undertake the review function for permits and licenses. If the vendor fails to keep up, the state then hires a new vendor to keep approvals current. And another point, too often state agencies continue to hike permit fees, allocate the money to other functions, and then cry poor when asked why permits are not processed in time. State agencies should be required to dedicate permit fees to permit processing until and unless there is no permit backlog and all permits are being processed by the legal deadline. So just when it comes to the larger issue of regulatory reform, let me be clear, no one is saying there shouldn't be rules. Of course there should be. However, those rules should be based on sound science and should be subjected to a meaningful and independent cost-benefit analysis. In environmental compliance, the continuous ratcheting of standards to capture the last molecule of emissions pushes us past the point of diminishing returns. Under that dynamic, costs soar ever higher as any potential benefit grows ever smaller. This approach is wasteful, counterproductive, and contrary to good sense, especially when Pennsylvania has led the nation in reducing emissions. To improve Pennsylvania's approach to regulations and permitting, there are many opportunities I would urge lawmakers to consider. First, because the public good that results from regulations is compliance, the state's regulatory agencies should be partners in compliance. Of course, willful and deliberate abuses should result in fines and penalties, but Pennsylvania citizens and businesses that are attempting to comply in good faith should be corrected when they err, not punished. The gotcha mentality of state regulatory agencies is unhelpful, and lawmakers should give them an attitude adjustment. In the absence of Pennsylvania-specific reasons, state regulations should not be allowed to be made stricter than federal regulations. The state regulatory agencies shouldn't be allowed to turn the screws on the rest of us just because they feel like it. Furthermore, and this is an important point that Kevin raised, rules that Pennsylvanians must obey should be issued only by the proper Pennsylvania authority that is accountable to our citizens. No one has the right to outsource our sovereignty. It is absolutely unacceptable and borderline insane for us to allow legislatures or bureaucracies from other states to impose rules on our people. Regulations should be reviewed on an ongoing basis to ensure that they are functioning as intended, are cost-effective, and are still necessary. Regulations that are found to be dysfunctional, overly expensive, or no longer needed should be revised or expunged. As it stands, state government only ever adds new rules, and no one ever goes back to see whether we still need them. An Office of the Repealer has been proposed by Representative Klunk, and I hope that this concept is revisited soon. So, and just two more points that I wanted to bring along about regulatory reform. First, the total cost of regulatory compliance should be calculated and published annually. Furthermore, once that process is institutionalized, the General Assembly should establish a process of regulatory budgeting whereby new regulatory costs must be offset with regulatory reductions so that the process of compliance does not continue to increase without limit. And lastly, regulations that impose a significant economic cost on the citizenry should require approval by the General Assembly in order to go into effect. And obviously, the RGGI electricity tax is just the perfect example of that. I would suggest a threshold of $1 million in costs. It might be appropriate. Others might suggest a different trigger point. Regardless, the bureaucracy should not have the ability to impose unlimited costs on the public, and the costliest rules should require legislative approval. So again, I really appreciate the chance to be here, and I will do my best to answer your questions.
Thank you. Briefly, it was mentioned, I believe, by Mr. Ford, Mr. Taylor, the situation that occurred in the Mon Valley as it relates to U.S. Steel. It's my understanding, but I want to ask you all, was the reason that project didn't happen because of permitting?
Yeah, I mean, it was a local permitting issue. It was within Allegheny County, but because U.S. Steel was forced to wait 2 years, and then ultimately was disapproved for a natural gas pipeline, which was a key component of the revitalization plan for the Edgar Thomson plant and the Clairton Coke Works. Yeah. That, I mean, ultimately that hobbled the project and telegraphed community disapproval to the point where, again, U.S. Steel was forced to claw that back and expand elsewhere. And again, I want to talk about what Mike mentioned. Like when the Radical Greens killed that natural gas pipeline, which was only a couple of miles.
7.
Yeah, so it sunk the whole project. That is over 1 million man-hours that our skilled tradesmen in Western Pennsylvania did not get to work, and therefore they did not get paid. And it makes me sick. I mean, not only did U.S. Steel not get to modernize, and modernization is critical for ongoing competitiveness and ultimately the longevity of those facilities, but to think about 1 million man-hours that our working men and women didn't get to apply their talents. Like, how many mortgage payments, how many rent payments, how many trips to the grocery store, how many tuition payments would have how many of those things were lost for everyday working people in Western Pennsylvania because the Radical Greens used the bureaucracy to thwart progress?
It's no surprise where the building trade stands against Reggie. We want energy in the state. We want to be able to grow energy in the state, and something like that would stop us. I do want to talk about that job. So that was 2 years it took about that. So time is money. Everything goes up. We're in an economy where things cost more. So 2 years later, the cost of asphalt, the cost of steel, the cost of everything goes up, up, up. So it's really important to get these things done as quickly as possible and get a shovel in the ground and start these jobs now. So.
Thank you.
That's why, I mean, as Kevin said, that's why Governor Hutchinson's words sting so bad, because
they're mocking us.
Yeah, I mean, and we deserve it.
And I get this all the time because my district is on the border of Ohio and West Virginia, and we have the petrochemical plant in my district, and we have developers wanting to build more manufacturing downstream, and a lot of people that are looking to invest, I've talked to and have said that we don't want to wait. We can just go to Ohio, West Virginia, and they want us there. So it's very unfortunate the opportunities that we're missing because of stuff like this. My understanding though was there was a DEP permit involved in that process as well with U.S. Steel. It was a local Allegheny County health permit and also a DEP permit that wasn't approved. That's.
I think they all interconnect. I'll use the Nacero project in Luzerne County as an example. There's a bridge over to West Nanticoke Bridge. It's in disrepair. It needs to be fixed, but it takes 6 years to get the permitting done. That job we need to get that job going. I'm from that area. I know that would create generational wealth for a lot of people that live there. You'd have good jobs while you build it and good jobs to maintain that project. But again, it takes so long to get a bridge done that's going to possibly impact that project.
Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimonies. Mr. Sunday, in your statement, your testimony, where the Arkansas governor made the statement that they can build faster than we can permit. Are you aware, or could you help us tell us what states do have a much quicker permitting process, something that we can look at, something, maybe a model that's out there so that we don't have to reinvent this wheel to get us moving in the right direction? Are there other states that you're aware of that do a much quicker job other than just the statement by Arkansas?
Sure. Yeah, Arkansas is one. I mean, I looked again. Ohio and West Virginia were mentioned. North Carolina, Texas. I mean, you got the tax piece, regulatory piece. I think we got to be holistic and understand what is our strengths and how do we get there. We can look at other states. Or we can have other states look to us. And I think if we really get this right, we got generation opportunity in front of us. So on the permitting piece, just on third-party reviews alone, I mean, there's blue states to do this, deep blue states like Jersey and Washington State for pretty complex site remediation projects. We were talking about old industrial brownfield sites. The state DEP said, this is really hard for us to manage. They actually had the state permitted projects over there that were not fit to be built upon, and they said, we got to fix this. So what did they do? They went to a third-party certification process in New Jersey, which certainly is not overall friendly to business, but in terms of addressing the industrial site remediation, they actually got that right. So third-party review, I would start there.
Thank you very much.
Chairman Dunbar.
Thank you, Chairman. Comment before question. First off, thank you all for your discussion about the governor's budget address, where he talked about approvals and the need for approvals. And I had to laugh that we're sitting there on the House floor and he says, well, if your approvals aren't done, you're going to get your money back. And the other side of the aisle rised up in great cheers and claps. And I look over to Chairman Kale, who sits a seat over from me on the House floor, and we both just looked at each other and said, deemed approval? And that's worth getting up and cheering for. But I do hope we can reach that point, and I do believe the governor is giving us more than just rhetoric on this, and I hope that is the case. Along those lines, several years ago, I was part of the performance-based budgeting board here in Pennsylvania, and we looked at DEP, and we looked at on outcome-based measurements of how quickly they approved different permits. From that study, it was very apparent that the Southwest region was woeful in comparison to other regions of the state. And I was wondering if you guys, do you know if that's still the case or how we can make those adjustments? Because I remember like the Northeast region was really good in comparison to the Southwest at approving permits. Look, in the Southwest, we don't want our money back. We want to get these things approved. So is that still the case? Can you guys comment on that?
I think that's gotten better. There's a management issue, there's a turnover issue. A lot of folks are around when some of these regulations were put together, understood the intent that the legislature, the administration worked together, and they retired. Southwest sort of notoriously had that problem. This is where the management piece and the backing of the front office and legislature comes into play. Few layers down in the agencies, you're into civil service, and we have to have a hard conversation about how you hold folks accountable, while at the same time wanting good folks to come into government. Making sure you say, all right, your job is to safely issue permits. Here's the training we need to do it. And Southwest, a lot of that problem got solved by taking review work to South Central, North Central, Northeast, and they do a good job of getting stuff turned around. But it comes down to, do you have management at the top, backing the front office, and willing to hold folks accountable for doing their jobs?
Because I do know when we had discussions about it back then, the conversation always went to, staff, we don't have enough staff, but that really was never the case. Different regions were all staffed the same way. And hopefully the vice chairman of this committee, who is still on PBB board, will look at that again, and maybe as people know they're being watched and know their outcomes are being measured, it also may help in that regard as well. But I always felt that the Southwest is at a huge disadvantage there.
Representative Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, guys, for your testimonies. So a couple things. First off, to be in business, to be able to plan and to budget, there's got to be a certain amount of certainty. So thank you, Mr. Sunday, for bringing up the word certainty, because that's, in reality, what's missing in a big way, because there's none. You don't know if or when you're going to get a permit, and that's a problem. Another thing that Mr. Ford mentioned, time is money, and I'm not sure many of our agencies understand that or consider that in the process either. And then we talked a lot about deemed approved, and several of you actually mentioned that. Mr. Taylor, I think, mentioned that first. So two things. Several years ago, I had the Region 3 EPA director in my office, and we had a lot of conversation about the whole permitting issue. And he said, you know, EPA sets a threshold for everything. And so every state has to meet these thresholds. At the same time, every state then is allowed to be more stringent in certain areas. And so for Pennsylvania, for example, being a bit more stringent because of a Chesapeake Bay would make some sense. But this is the Region 3 Director's comment about Pennsylvania DEP compared to other DEPs that he works with in the 7 states that he covers, and he worked out of the Philadelphia office. He said, Pennsylvania is more restrictive in everything. And therein lies, that's the crux of our problem. And so I'll just give you one example of a case in our district, in my district right now, where an individual's been trying to build 3 turkey houses for a year and a half, been waiting on a permit for a year and a half. In the meantime, look what interest rates have done. And they're now contemplating just scrapping the project. And talk about recouping money or being paid back. There is no such thing. He spent tremendous amount of money just on planning, on engineering, on stormwater, and you name it. He's not going to get that back when he quits this project. So here's my question, really all of you. What, in your mind, is the very best and most important thing that we as legislators could do to help fix this?
One thing? No, Representative, thank you for the question. Ultimately, that one thing is accountability. And that may be, the most difficult thing because, again, we have a unionized bureaucracy and that, the AFSCME question comes into play. But, there has to be a means by which our leaders, both in the executive and in the legislative, can get these state agencies to stop being dysfunctional. And, I think that really is the heart of the question and that everything else, follows from that.
I mean, we laid out our 5 points. I mean, the one other piece I'd mention, and I think Chairman Kale hinted at this with the local government piece, in most cases, DEP won't issue the permit until the local government has done their sign-off. What oftentimes do you need to get the local government sign-off? An engineer design plan. What do you need to do a design? You need to know what your stormwater controls are, and that goes back to then you're back at DEP saying, how do you design this? And then you might have 3 or 4 local sewer authorities disagreeing on the Chesapeake Bay loads. So we laid out some framework pieces. I think what could really help is, DCD has local government pieces, DEP does, that do the local governments have the resources and knowledge to get through these complex permitting pieces and be a part of the discussion. So I would add that as part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, I agree. The stormwater, that's an interesting one. Everyone has their own stormwater, whether it's East Hanover, West Hanover, Derry Township, that's where I live clearly. So they're all different. It would be nice to have some uniformity. One thing I might suggest is that as you're making policy, bring in people that actually do the work, whether you're from the manufacturing, you're from the building and construction, or you're a business owner. Bring in people that actually do the work so that you can have a real life explanation of what is holding it up.
Yeah, Mike is exactly right about that. And going off of what Kevin recommended about codifying the Office of Transformation, that office should also have a private sector advisory board for exactly this reason, so that people who have been operating or attempting to operate under Pennsylvania's regulatory umbrella, that they can bring their real-world experience to the work of that central agency.
Good, great points.
Representative Klein.
Hello, thank you all for being here today. My question goes along the lines of what Rep. Dunbar had mentioned about the permitting process could potentially be different per region, but my question is, do you think that the permitting process is different per industry? And let me just give you an example. I have a local farmer that needed a septic permit and got all of the locals to sign off on it. But when DEP came in, they pushed a $25,000 septic system for one house on a farm, okay? And we couldn't get the DEP permit for it. So immediately made me think, I wonder if this is going on just for the farming industry, or is it supposed to be the same all across all industries?
So a couple of things there. Yes, so in the context of air quality, different industries, DEP will develop different regulations. For example, if you're a boat shop and you're spraying fiberglass, they'll have industry-specific emission standards. So within that, I think broadly there's air, water, waste regulations that apply to everybody. And then we have an oil and gas that's specific there. Obviously, the mining, both surface and coal, they have different regulations. Some of the biggest frustrations you'll come across is when the surface mining folks interpret stormwater regulations one way, and the water, like internally, DEP will disagree about how the project needs permitted. And that's where you're, again, back to front office accountability and leadership to sort of hammer that out.
And training.
And training.
Correct, because as we hire new employees, because apparently the governor is, thinking about hiring more employees there, maybe we could talk about training a little bit per industry. So thank you.
Representative Kiefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you all have mentioned, the different things that the governor has said, and I was encouraged by a lot of those things too. But for example, he has spoken of RGGI before, that he was opposed to it, right? That he was not going to support it, but there was nothing in the budget to rein that back. And also even the permitting, as we've discussed. We don't want our money back. We want the permit. Have you had any of these conversations with his administration, any of the agencies, about a better solution? Alternatives?
Well, the administration understandably is waiting for the confirmation of their cabinet officers. So, those meetings are pending. For us, we believe that they're going to happen, and again, we'll test the administration's receptivity to some of these suggestions. But again, it's obviously my own bias, but I think that these things are pretty reasonable. And again, insofar as the administration is willing to, to work with us on this, I think that could constitute a significant victory for Pennsylvania. So again, it's an important question that you pose, and the answer is not yet, but we're gonna.
That's uniform across the board here. Sure. Okay. All right. So and listen, I think all of you have sat and testified before on these same issues. I have the REINS Act. I've had it every session since I've been here, just saying $1 million or greater regulation needs to go before the General Assembly to the people that you elected to hold them accountable, right? So if you don't like it, but it still goes, it passes here, it passes the Senate, and we still can't get traction on it. And again, it's not a silver bullet, but it would at least start putting some of these things, checks and balances, back in place. The other question I have, so we talked about permits from agency to agency, though, and we're talking a lot about DEP here, but what about labor and industry? Because I've gotten many calls with the labor and industry just trying to, all of the regulations and the fees that are coming down on that. Any challenges with that agency as far as compliance and permitting?
Yeah, I appreciate you raising that, Representative Kiefer. Our Vice President Alex Hopper leads on labor policy. He's got a lot of thoughts on how we shore up the UC and workers' comp system. I think the pandemic showed a lot of need to modernize and improve. I mean, you had a lot of folks getting the card in the mail that never applied for UC, and then you had folks that were trying to get on it that couldn't get on it. And a lot of talk about IT upgrades. There's the licensing, both certifying new facilities, whether that's healthcare. I mean, so what else did the pandemic bring to light? There's a lot of regulatory waivers that were arguably put in place to protect public health and safety, and then we had a crisis. a lot of those got waived, and it made sense. And to your legislature's credit, worked with Governor Wolf and said, well, we're going to permanently remove some of these. So taking a step further, what do you do on things like occupational licensing? So if somebody moves to the state, we want people to move to the state, can they bring their PE with them, their teacher certification? You've done some things piecemeal. As we look to grow and invest in the state, we think there's a broader conversation to have on that workforce piece, and that's multiple agencies as well.
And so my last piece is, everyone has spoke about the third-party agency process, possibly to expedite the permitting review process. And I have a little bit of trepidation there because it's another gauntlet. And you know how these things will kind of morph. But I understand it's, the request. What about certification? And I say this even with municipalities, where you bring something in that came from an engineer, it's already been stamped, you're paying for their stamp, they are licensed by the Commonwealth, and then I have to pay the municipality to review that same thing that I just had submitted by a state certified licensed engineer. If they are licensed, as a permit reviewer, why not even that? I mean, because they're licensed, they would be on the hook. And a lot of those things require them to be bonded to a certain amount as well. So why, possibly that as another option where it's on the individual, right? You can be a licensed, and we have them with, inspection stations, right? It's on the individual, they do it. You don't have to go to a third party. You can go to an state certified inspection office, and then they get audited annually as well. So has there been any discussions or thoughts to possibly that process?
That's an excellent idea, and we should absolutely do it.
Thank you.
A couple things. For those of you that are joining us online, the system has been fixed. We can take questions now. Thank you, Herb, for getting that done for us. I appreciate it. And the other thing I would like to add, although it was not mentioned in the budget address regarding Reggie from the governor, there is $600 million that is there anticipating the implementation of Reggie. So he was not silent on it. There is no will from the administration to pull out of Reggie. I do believe they are waiting to see what happens with the court. However, they have the ability, if they want to announce today, to pull us out, because it was Governor Shapiro that put us in. It was not an act of this legislature, as we know in this room. Chairwoman Oberlander.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, many of my questions were already asked, but I have to make a comment because I feel like we're singing with the choir, and I love what you're saying about the advisory board, the powers of the administration versus the legislature. All things that we have been really harping on. I hate to use that word, but for years. This is now all of a sudden it's like, hallelujah, we're all on the same page. So I appreciate where you have been and that you continue to be there, and some of the suggestions that Representative Kiefer just made about maybe some better ways to get that done. I've shared the same frustration with businesses who literally have met with DEP a year out in anticipation, hoping that they could smooth that runway when it got time for that project, and still we wait. DEP's lack of full review before it goes back to that business owner with, well, page one, you have a problem. Okay, so you fix page one and you send it back and you get put on the bottom of the list and you start all over again. It's no wonder that Pennsylvania is missing out. But the points that you made specifically about the radical Greens and what happened with U.S. Steel is so frustrating to me because, as you mentioned, it would have actually reduced the emissions. It would have created millions of hours of manpower. And quite frankly, it wasn't decided on its merits. It was decided on political will. And that should never happen. And so I look forward to making some of these changes, and I am hopeful that the governor is sincere in his comments and his desire to smooth this over and start working more with us and better with the business community. Again, thank you for your comments. Your testimony is spot on. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Representative Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to behave myself. I represent Greene County and parts of Washington, the Mon Valley. We have a habit of telling you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So I want to share with the committee and this group a story about a small community called Kochberg, Pennsylvania. Now, that's sort of an indicator where they arose, Kochberg. So they have one asset, and one major asset is a fishing pond that's left over from the industry. Before I ever became a representative, I got introduced to the problems that they were having permitting to try to save this dam. This goes back to 2014. We're closing in on 10 years now. We have lost grants. We have lost a lot of, I'm sure, people in that community because they have generations of photographs of people fishing in that pond. DEP back in my district stands for Don't Expect Protection. I'm sorry, that's what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. We had taken this as high up as the Lieutenant Governor's office, person to person, asking for help to save this dam and moving it forward. So I'm issuing today an invitation to the governor to come to Kochberg, Pennsylvania, and help this community and help my constituents save this asset. This is ridiculous government overreach. So we appreciate your testimony. Trust me, we feel your pain very deeply. It's tough when you look in the eyes of children and explain to them why they can no longer fish in a pond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Ledbetter.
Thank you, Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony this morning. I appreciate you all being here. As an advocate for creating a policy that fosters more economic growth, not only for my district, but for the Commonwealth, I share in the sentiment of my colleagues here today and the testimony that you've all provided us. I have a comment and then a question. The third-party review of permits, Mr. Sunday, that you included in the permitting reform pillars submitted in your testimony, I echo Representative Kiefer's comment in a healthy trepidation in expanding government. I am an advocate for less government, not more efficient government. And so in the context of the pillar, you have qualified third parties. And I would just like to emphasize the point that she made a moment ago, which when looking at subject matter experts to support and address the workforce challenge that these departments are experiencing, rather than just looking to subject matter experts and those third-party organizations, actually deferring to the licensed professionals. Because these licensed professionals, as pointed out, are licensed, they are bonded. And so if there's opportunity for the chamber to evolve that stance, I think it would be well-founded. So that way, again, we can address the challenge by innovating to overcome it and not necessarily reinforcing the model that has been presented to us by creating more bureaucracy. So with that comment and offer of collaboration made, I do want to pivot to an area that has been innovative within this space within the last decade or so, and that's specifically to the move to online permitting and that process. It was originally presented as a way to introduce more efficiency, provide an ease in onboarding and introduction to the permitting process. However, I can't help but seem to come away with the assessment that it has enhanced the bottleneck, where you are able to now dump more into the queue, but the resources in processing it inevitably have remained stagnant and or been reduced. So my question is to all of you, in regard to the online permitting process, how has this helped, if it's helped at all, and can it be improved?
Happy to start. Appreciate the comment. I don't, to go back to the third party, I don't think we disagree as much as, you know, it might appear. Obviously, we want licensed professionals, whether it's PEs or professional geologists, whatever, that would be who you contract with. And that's a process some other states have used. So I think there's a lot of common ground there. On the e-permitting, it's been helpful. I think the challenge is there's been some IT management issues where suddenly the platform's just kind of gone dark, and folks are having a challenge getting stuff upgraded or getting a renewal and on time, and then getting that paid attention to. And it's not been every program area at DEP. So you've got some program areas that can fully accept e-permitting. You've got other programs that literally can't accept credit card payment, that they need money order or check in the year of our Lord 2023. That's where some state government agencies are right now. So I understand that there's a desire to get the e-permitting across the board, and if done right, should be able to kind of do that first check, right? When you sign up for a magazine subscription and say, no, you need to tell us like your zip code, like the platform should be able to say, is everything here, and that gets you through the process. Things like drone data is another piece where I think there needs to be some more conversation to have. Can it be submitted as good data to do a wetlands delineation? That's really in the weeds, but it's sort of, you know, the use of drones and autonomous flight technology, a lot of folks are using to get more efficient on the permitting side, and I know the folks are using it for site inspections, and we just need to work through some of those privacy issues and data integrity issues, but that's an area where I would think we can get a little bit more efficient.
I mean, it comes back again to accountability. The tools are only as good as the operators and the people who are administering the system. As we've seen the catastrophic failure of the UC system during the pandemic shutdown, where, people who qualified for benefits and applied for them never received them. People who hadn't applied for them and didn't qualify didn't receive them. I mean, we need good leadership. We need strong oversight. And again, insofar as Kevin was saying, the technology, would prevent keystroke errors where somebody, where I'm listed as David Tyler instead of David Taylor, like that maybe the data entry on, e-permits helps to minimize that kind of thing. But again, it's what's behind that website that really matters.
Again, I can't help but emphasize everything that you both just pointed out with the e-permitting. Mr. Sunday, as a FAA UAV pilot, these are things that, again, going back to the original comment, there's a process there in order to hold that certification. And there's, in that certification, a degree of qualification that then merits the activity as usable. And then, Mr. Taylor, your point in regard to basic accountability. The accountability over these models, whether it be ancillary data entry that could otherwise hold up a permit, and then that resulting from the very, very basic error of a keystroke. These are things that shouldn't be accepted. I look forward to working with my colleagues, not only here, but on the floor, to again make these improvements, and I look forward to collaborating with you all going forward. Thanks.
Vice Chairman Eckert.
Thank you, Chairman Kyle. I will, when we talk about permitting, there's things that obviously Pennsylvania is not doing very well that other states are. And something that's come to, I've learned about is we see pad-ready sites. That doesn't really exist in Pennsylvania, right? Because what that means is you can buy the property, but then you have no idea what that means from that point on. Other states have done some investment or have opportunities where you purchase a property. Ohio, for example, you purchase a property, and every step you need to take every step you need to take in order to get that permit. It's already laid out there. What kind of advantage do you think if Pennsylvania went down that route and actually had these pre-identified sites that outline, okay, here's the permits you need to get. You do X, Y, and Z, the permit issues right away. I mean, these are steps that are truly pad-ready sites to recruit out-of-state businesses into Pennsylvania.
Representative, it would make a world of positive difference for us. Unfortunately, just as a reality check, DCED should have done this forever ago. They keep promising to do it, but they've never done it. We don't even have a master list of brownfields. Like, I don't understand how that's not possible, but anyway, that's where we are. And so, yes, after we do the fundamental work of identifying all of the available sites for industrial development, to document all of the relevant facts about those sites, have those things available so that when an out-of-state investor comes to Pennsylvania, asks the Commonwealth to say, hey, I need this many acres with this much road frontage or rail frontage or river frontage or all three, that you can say, hey, this, you pull up the list, hopefully it's like searchable, and then you would say, hey, we've got this property and here's what would go. And the next step then would be that here's the list of all the different steps that you need to go through. And, again, in competitor states, I believe, I've heard first-person stories about both Virginia and South Carolina, that the Commonwealth, that the state government there provides concierge service to say, we will be a partner in compliance for you because we want your investment and we want the jobs and the growth, and that they actually work with the companies to help the companies to comply so the project can advance. We are very far away from that here in Pennsylvania, but the world doesn't have to be this way. Like, that's the good news. The bad news is that we do all these dumb things to ourselves to get in our own way. The good news is that it's within our power to change it, and after we do, there are tremendous inherent advantages for Pennsylvania: our geographic location, our access to market, our natural resources, almost unlimited fresh water. We've got massive amounts of energy. We've got a lot of institutions of higher learning. We've got mature financial institutions, like things that other states don't have and that they're attempting to put in place, we already have. So if we can just, again, change the mindset in Pennsylvania, it's not good enough to be just slightly less bad than New York and New Jersey. We've got to benchmark Pennsylvania against the high-performing states. And again, Indiana and North Carolina are not that far away.
Yeah, and Mr. Taylor, to your point, I'm glad you brought up the brownfield sites. In my district, there was an old brickyard facility that it had stayed dormant for years and years and years, and an industry decided to relocate there, and then realized we can expand this to make this more of an industrial complex, and recruited a business from from Georgia, actually, and then recruited a business from Canada, of all places. But the process with which they had to go to get there, they're just now, I'm heading into my 5th year in office. They started that process when I first got in the office. Then they're just now starting construction, and that's a problem.
Yes, sir.
And we need to hold the administration accountable for that. They've committed that they want to work and make Pennsylvania open for business and business friendly, and Governor Shapiro said that in his address. So we need to hold him accountable for that, and I think it starts with DEP permits and also PennDOT permits, and streamlining that process and allowing these truly pad-ready sites, like these brownfield sites, to be on this list and clean them up at the same time. So I appreciate that.
I agree, and and again, I want to give credit where it's due, in that looking at some of the people that the governor has put forward for these cabinet posts, they are non-radicals. So even though we haven't interacted yet with the new DEP secretary designate, he does have the great benefit of not being John Hanger. So we'll take what we get, and insofar as the administration is doing good things, we want to give them appropriate praise. Again, I destroy my enemy when I make him my friend.
Yeah, I think his exact quote is, he's competitive as hell. So let's be there.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Shalaba.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone here. I'm doing virtual today, but I'm wondering if you could, wow, I can hear myself. I'm wondering if you could and shed some internal appeals process, as well as your thoughts on the circumvention of that. Is there any ideas on a fast-track appeal to common law, waiving those fees, creating a presumption that representatives of the are acting outside of the scope of and their authority? What else can we do to give to the permit seeker in appealing issues that arise during the process favorable to them?
Representative Shalaba, we actually, so you were going in and out as you were speaking. If you could summarize the question for us, I'm sorry.
That's all right. How about I just text it to you, Josh? You can read it.
Yes, please.
That'll work. All right, that'll work.
Did you type it in the?
Yeah, we'll get the question out here. Give us a second here. All right. Any other questions? Once we get that question from Representative Shalaba, we will pass it along. Oh, yep, Representative Kiefer.
I just want to follow up on something that Representative Eckert said, which was on point with, as far as the ombudsman that we had. And I think from time to time, maybe that has come about, or they've mentioned it or discussed it at DCD. But at one point, I'm thinking, and not to insult you, but I think you've been around a little longer than I have, and so I think under the Ridge administration and the Rendell administration, there were, I used them when I was working with short line railroads, databases of brownfields and industrial development sites. Was that just by like local, either chambers or commerce authorities, regional maybe?
I mean, I'd have to expect that that's the case. I mean, the Commonwealth doesn't have a master database of industrial properties. So anything else is fragmentary, and it may also be by this point out of date.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, Representative, I have been here longer than you.
I just wasn't sure if there were anything that had been started, like you said, it may be out of date, but that had been. I feel like there was an initiative that was started years ago. Maybe it just died off.
Team PA is sort of a public-private partnership. They do have a list that they market sites as they go out and talk to site selectors, and that was a Governor Ridge initiative to start Team PA and have better cooperation between DCD, DEP, and the private sector. The other thing Ridge did that fell along the wayside was within DEP have a compliance assistance office that, it takes a lot for somebody to pick up the phone and call DEP and say, I'm not sure what the rules are here, because you know what that does. If are you opening up yourself to a compliance obligation? So the Ridge administration set up an office, said confidentially, we'll set up some, checks and bounds. There's a firewall here. We'll help you figure out your problem and talk a solution, and not refer it over to enforcement. And that was helpful. It fell by the wayside. Rendell shifted the operations around and never got revived. But that's something worth revisiting. I know Representative Struzzi had introduced legislation in past sessions to bring that back, and that could be something thinking about old ideas that maybe are worth a relook.
Thank you.
All right, we did get Representative Shalaba's question, and I'll read it to you guys here. Can someone shed light on the internal process, appeals process, and thoughts on how we can either give that teeth or circumvent it? Should we have a fast track to the Commonwealth Court with filing fees waived, attorney fees, presumptions that the agent is acting outside of the scope of the authority?
Yes, I appreciate the question, and it's something that we touch on. We've supported legislation Senator Bartolotta introduced in the last couple of sessions that basically, again, limits the scope of appeals to the issues raised in public comment. So right now, if DEP permit gets issued, anybody can go to Environmental Hearing Board and say, I have all these problems with it. And then they sift through it one by one, and it takes months and months, if not a couple years of litigation to get through. We're simply saying, just stick to the issues that were raised in comment and get through the appeals process faster. That's what we do under federal law, and it works reasonably well there. So I would bring that down. Commonwealth Court's been pretty good on, I think, limiting the scope of the Environmental Rights Amendment. It's been a mixed bag at the Supreme Court, but I think the Environmental Hearing Board, you got to also have an issue there of the judges and how long they've been there and what's the process. So it sort of doesn't get all the attention that it should, but it is an administrative court that, unlike workers' comp appeals, is technically outside of DEP, and you could potentially have some discussions there on how the whole process works. The attorney's fees is another one that, up until a recent state Supreme Court decision, the Environmental Hearing Board would only award fees in cases of bad faith. Now they're saying, let's be a little more loose with that. So it's concerning because we're aware that one of the reasons permitting takes so long is DEP is under the gun knowing they might get litigated against any permit. And it's a big cost to them if they lose a case and have to pay the environmental group's attorney's fees. So that's one of the reasons why they want to check every box and overthink these decisions, because they don't know where the litigation is going to come from. So our argument in response to that Supreme Court decision would be to say, only if somebody really mischaracterized things in a permit application and really screwed up, but this should not be a place that you get to fund your operations out of constantly bringing the agency and private sector to court.
Mr. Taylor?
No, I cannot improve on that. Kevin's exactly right.
All right, Representative Twardzik.
Good morning. It's a very enthusiastic panel. Thank you so much for your time. I have spent about 37 years in economic development here in Schuylkill County, and the permitting would certainly be a big success. And perhaps we can get the governor's action team to add this to their toolbox, and that would eliminate the need for some tax incentives and giveaways, because if we could speed up the process, they want to be here in Pennsylvania because of our location and workforce.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And that we need to attack the baseline costs of creating and keeping businesses in Pennsylvania, that we don't want to rely on gimmicks or special incentives or whatnot, because inevitably those things run out, and that there isn't enough taxpayer money in the whole Commonwealth to make up the difference in profitability between being in a burdensome state versus a high performing state. So, insofar as we can make progress with pro-growth tax relief, with limiting lawsuit abuse, with building out the workforce, and with rationalizing the regulatory system, all of those things are fundamental to improving Pennsylvania's baseline competitiveness.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming in, and hopefully we'll be able to work with the good governor and keep Pennsylvania moving forward. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, I would just like to say thank you to our testifiers here today. Something that I noticed immediately, and I think it's very important for us to stay focused on, is that this is about opportunities for family-sustaining jobs. This is about your members, Mr. Ford. It's about your members' employees. It's about your members' employees. It's about our constituents having opportunities in Pennsylvania to stay here, and not just for a couple of months, but for generations, because we do have the resources. We do have the workforce. We do have all kinds of things put into place as it relates to our universities and transportation, access to market. We have a lot of things going for us. We need to make sure that our obstacles are taken out within this permitting process. And another thing I heard here today is the status quo doesn't work. We need to be disruptors of the status quo when it comes to development, when it comes to growth, and permitting is a big problem that we're seeing. So I'm looking forward to working with you all. I'm looking forward to putting together some legislative initiatives off the basis of what I heard here today. And I'm sure we'll hear from you again very soon. Thank you for being here. Meeting's adjourned.